Thank you for joining us today. Today we're going to talk about checklists and revisiting those. I think it's the right time of the year to talk about that. Can somebody please show me a sign, text in the chat box down below if you can hear me. Show me a sign. Okay. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on here. What I'll invite you to do, take a moment. I'd like you to think about the very first, think about the ultimate call that you've been on. Think about the service call, the experience that you've gone on, where the house has absolutely everything that you would like. This is the most amazing house that you've ever seen. It's got a tankless water heater if you're a plumber. It's got the whole house filtration. It's got everything that you'd like in a house. If you're an air conditioning service manager or technician, think about the ultimate systems that you've seen. The house has everything. Programmable thermostat, zoning, high efficiency system. It's got everything that you want. Take a moment and think about that. Think about the home that absolutely has everything. Okay, you got that picture? Now what I'd like you to also think about is how many of the homes that you go to don't have all those things. And I think that's pretty typical. My old boss shared with me years and years ago that, you know, every home that we go into isn't like that. Not every home has everything that we look for in a system and are all of the systems or services that we offer. And our job is to uncover those needs and help explain those and show those to the customer. So one of the best tools that we have for that is the inspection checklist. So for the inspection checklist, we're going to talk about how we use this tool to support the summary of findings. And for those of you that have been through the service system or are comfortable with the service system training, we use this tool to explain options, to put together bundles for our clients. But how do we build that? So one of the best tools that we have is the inspection checklist. So I put up an example of what the service partner checklist is, and you can find these on the Nexstar site. And we have service partner evaluations for electrical, HVAC. This one happens to be plumbing. But I'd like to go through this for a moment. The purpose of the call today is not to dissect the checklist, but it's how this fits into the scheme of the call, all right? So in this example, you can see that you've got several things to check, okay? And each one of these should take some time and thought. And it's also an opportunity to get the customer involved in the checklist and to share with them things that you observe or notice in their home. So let's take this example, the water closet. Typically, homes will have more than one of those. You know, so if you've got 3 of those, you've got a lot of things to look at in a water closet. Doing the dye test, really taking the time to do the drops in the tank to see if those pass through, to flush it, to do a visual inspection. Are the bolt covers tight? Is it secure and level? Emergency shutoff valves. You know, think about for a moment, how many of the homes that we go into really don't have, you know, new emergency shutoff valves in those, or maybe quarter turn shutoffs, or do they have the proper lines? Bursting water lines are one of the most common causes of water damage within homes, okay? So this is a very important area for us to inspect because we can prevent a lot of things. So at face value, the checklist is pretty harmless, but when you really spend some time dissecting each one of the items in the service partner plan, there's a lot of things for us to look at. So why do we use the inspection checklist? Well, kind of like a pilot, it keeps us on track, and it's the sign of a professional. We don't want to miss the important steps as we're going through the house. And it's pretty easy to do that, especially if we prejudge a call and we look at these things and say, well, this call's pretty new, and there's not a lot of stuff for us to see here. But the reality of it is, once we take a really deep dive on this stuff, there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of things that we can notice that will really avoid some problems for our customers. So it'll keep us on track so that we don't miss important steps. It also builds value in our service. It's a sign of professionalism when you come in with an organized checklist. And again, the checklist is designed for the customer to see it, gives us talking points, an opportunity for us to ask questions with our clients. And our customers expect it, especially if we're using it on a pre-existing maintenance customer, where we've been to their home several times. They're maybe used to the drill, if you will. They're used to us going through their home and doing a thorough inspection with them. And they want to see the checklist. It doesn't mean they want to say yes to everything that we might notice or point out to them, but they've come to expect a certain level of professionalism from your company. And if a technician goes in there and doesn't use it, that could be a huge red flag for them, and they might notice that. Same is no different than walking into a house on a maintenance customer and then not putting the shoe covers on. If they're used to seeing that every single time, then that's a pretty good indicator that they're conditioned, and that's the service we strive for, is that consistency in the service that we deliver. Okay. It reduces preventable emergencies. So things like the water shutoff on underneath a sink, near a water closet, the washing machine hoses. These are all things that can really cause a lot of challenges for a customer. So, our job is to prevent these emergencies. And that's why a checklist is so important to integrate into your service process. So think about a call where you've been on and you've handled a situation, the customer was very happy with us, and then a week later we get a phone call that something entirely different happened, but it was a plumbing emergency. And the customer feels like, we were out there, we should have noticed this. How come you didn't share this with me? All right, so our job is to really look outside of the scope of just the thing that we're there to address and try to find out where can we help them and prevent some other things that are bad. Okay. We always talk about this in the service system. We're looking for good things that are not happening and bad things that are, right? So that's where the checklist really comes in. Another benefit of the checklist is it determines cause and effect. And again, if we're just looking at the scope of the problem, but we're really not looking at what caused the problem. Okay, and a good example of that could be taking the water pressure. And a seasoned plumber will typically take the water pressure on the house every time, just like a doctor takes the blood pressure reading every time you go to the doctor's visit. It doesn't matter if you're there for a heart problem or a hangnail. The doctor's going to take the blood pressure because they know that that's an indicator of a lot of problems. And it's the same way with us, and a good plumber is going to inspect the pressure within the house, because we know that that's going to contribute to leaky faucets, burst water heaters, dripping toilet tanks. So that's why this is such an important step, to be consistent and look for cause and effect. If you rebuild the toilet and then the next day it's still dripping because we didn't check the pressure on the house, that's a challenge, and the checklist can help keep us on track for that. It also helps to reduce potential property damage. So things like the burst washing machine hoses, emergency shutoffs, all these types of things can cause catastrophic damage inside a home, and this helps not only protect us as companies, but it also helps protect our clients from damage that we, as professionals, should notice. It also serves to educate our customers on potential improvements to their home. So, for example, a whole house water filtration, or an air filtration system for a heating and air conditioning technician, or surge protectors on an electrical service call. These are all things that the customer might not even be aware of, but as professionals, we know what we're looking for, and we know what things that we can offer for our clients. And they might not even know that they're missing it or that it exists, and that's where we come in. we can share this information with them and, really offer some things that make their lives better. If you're in an area that has hard water and we're offering a whole house filtration system, or the quality of their water is not very good, a whole house filtration system can really be something that people get excited about. But if we don't talk about it, if we don't share the technology with them, they're not even going to know what they're missing. How many homes do you go into that have a Toto washlet? If you talk to a client of yours that has a Toto washlet toilet seat, they'll tell you, I couldn't live without my Toto, because it's something that might not seem like it's a very important thing, but it really has a lot of value for our clients. They just love them. Okay, so our job is to really educate our clients, and the checklist can really help us come up with some things that can make their lives a whole lot nicer. Okay. So when should we use the inspection checklist? When at maintenance visits, clubs, advertised tune-ups. I would even recommend including that on demand calls whenever possible. Never miss a chance to impress your customers. So this is an opportunity for you, even if it's a demand service call. And I think a lot of companies don't really take that approach of using a thorough examination process or a checklist on a non-maintenance call. But this is a fantastic opportunity for us because, the customer still has needs that we haven't uncovered. And that's why the checklist is such a fantastic tool for it. So get in the habit of using that, because every call can benefit from a checklist. It builds value. All right, and we talked about having a systematic approach. And I'll share a story. I had a plumber that was just phenomenal. We were doing a promotion for free plumbing inspections, and this plumber was just killing it. He had about a $1,500 to $1,700 average ticket on these free inspections. And as you know, a free inspection might not be the most exciting call to get. It's not a customer that's calling in because they have a defined need. It's a free plumbing inspection, and free doesn't always have a lot of value. Well, my plumber was so extremely thorough that he went through this. He used a checklist, and he used it very diligently. And the checklist is not designed to be a selling tool or a closing tool, okay? And that's an important distinction to make, because this plumber went through the checklist in excruciating detail. And when I rode with him, I really, being a little bit more type A, felt like we were spending a little bit too much time on the checklist. Well, I was wrong. By being extremely thorough, by using each one of those talking points to educate the customer and really taking his time going through this, he delivered so much value. And it's really a great tool for you to play show and tell, where he would get the client involved and say, excuse me, ma'am, do you have a moment? I'd like to share something with you. And he would show her underneath her faucets, where the corrosion was. He would show her these angle stops. He would take the lid off the toilet tank. And, throughout this very methodical, very thorough process where he's using his flashlight, he's educating, and again, not closing at that point, but sharing, educating. Let me make a note of that, documenting those issues. All right, this is just such a useful tool, and the more you slow down and really use it to its full effect, it's really going to help populate this guy, okay, the summary of findings. So we get a lot of our observations from the client, but the checklist is a great tool to help us uncover some of those things so that we can share our observations on the summary of findings. So, and if the customer is with you and they're sharing not only the challenge that we were there for today, but as you go through the checklist and you find all these different things, these go in the observations category and the summary of findings. And by doing that, you can bundle more options, and the more you educate your client, the more things that you're going to solve for them. Okay, so it all fits very well into the summary of findings. This example is, of course, the plumbing summary of findings, and it's much different for the technicians, HVAC technicians, using the ABC approach. Okay, but the principle is still the same. That tool feeds this tool. All right. All right. Now is absolutely the perfect time to revisit the checklist for the change of seasons. Okay, so I want you, even though we might still have some warm weather, we might even still be running some air conditioning calls in parts of the country, really our mind needs to be in fall and winter, because that's where we're going. All right, so this is the perfect time to integrate the checklist into your training process. If you haven't already done fall training on your checklist, this is the time to do it. You know, dust off the checklist, pull it out, make sure your technicians are 100% comfortable going through this. Okay, the checklist is going to give you you know, furnace checklist. So right now, think of it this way: HVAC technicians are very comfortable with their air conditioning checklist, but they probably have a different one in your business that you use for the winter time or for heating visits. So it's really an important time to get back to the basics, dust that thing off, go through the steps, do some technical training on each one of those, and you know, really take the time to be thorough in what your expectations are. An exercise that I always did with my technicians was, and of course I made this very interactive, but get your technicians' input. Okay, refocus yourself on a fall tune-up, and what are some of the things that you are going to encounter? What are the top 5 or the top 10 things that you're going to see on a heating tune-up? Okay, what do we need to drill into? And they're going to come up with things like, well, we need to check the vent cap, we need to check the capacitors, the blower motors, filtration, UV lights, of course, you know, humidifier pads, thermostats. You know, there's typically at least a handful of very common items that they're going to run across. Okay, so for us as service managers and technicians, we need to make sure that we know how to explain those issues. We need to make sure we know how to inspect those things. For us managers, we need to make sure we have those things on the truck, okay, because the inventory that you typically carry in the summertime might be different than the winter. So we need to make sure we're prepared for that. The training should also include some of the things that we have to do in the fall, like you know, charging a heat pump. You know, for an air conditioning technician, that's something that he's going to have to retrain himself for, how to do an inspection on a furnace. You know, we haven't done that. That's one of the things that I always really loved about the heating and air conditioning trade. It really is almost like 2 different trades. But once you get once you have the change of the season, you know, it's new and different again. But you kind of have to knock the dust off those skills a little bit. Okay. So how do we introduce the checklist? You know, I sometimes get that from some service managers or technicians that, well, you know, the customer doesn't want me to do the inspection, and a lot of that comes back to the greet step. All right, and so remember setting the agenda that is so critical on the greet step. Let me take a second to explain what we're going to do today. First, we'll take a look at your water heater. I'm also going to take a look, do a thorough evaluation of your entire system. If I should notice anything that deserves your attention, what would you like me to do? Great. Okay. I'm going to ask you some questions, and I welcome yours. Then we'll go over some options together, and with your approval, we'll get started today. Sound okay? And if your teams master the agenda, that's going to open the door for the checklist every time. That is such a critical step to introducing the checklist, because at that point the customer is giving you license to do a thorough examination of their home. And again, the wording that you use in the agenda is extremely critical. We're not looking for problems, okay? We're noticing things that deserve your attention. Those are critical differences, okay? So using those to educate make sure your technicians have got those down. And another key technique that we teach in the service system course is the magic of asking questions, okay? We really have to learn how to funnel questions, and the checklist is the perfect thing to use as, you know, as your script, okay? How long has this been leaking? Does it leak only after a shower, or is it continuous? How accurate is your thermostat? Do you notice big fluctuations? And as you're making a note of the things that they're speaking to you about, and you write those on your checklist, capture their thoughts. Again, this is fuel for your summary of findings. And so this is where all that comes from. Okay, so the checklist is really an important piece of it. Okay, so by By mastering your checklist, what's the result? Well, your customers are going to be happier. Um, if they have situations that they weren't aware of and we've addressed those, they're going to be happier customers. For us, we're going to have less callbacks. By being more thorough, by identifying things that could bite us later, you're not going to have nearly as many callbacks if you're using a thorough diagnostic process and you're checking everything in the systems or the plumbing system. Increased revenue, obviously. If we notice things, we have important things that the client needs, we put those on our summary of findings and we populate our options. That's going to result in increased revenue, which of course is going to result, typically in increased income for us personally. So increased revenue is a really nice benefit to the happy customers and less callbacks. And finally, increased income. Okay, so by being thorough, and there's a phrase that I've used for years and years, and I think it's so true. There's more money to be made in these trades, honestly, than there is by being scandalous. So the challenge is to be thorough, to really use the checklist, to be honest, to have integrity, but to make our money by being thorough. The opportunity is out there, okay? The need is out there, but we have to be diligent enough, disciplined enough to use a checklist, to take our time, and to be thorough. Okay. So with that, I'm going to open this up for questions. And if you've got questions, please share those with me. You've got a box down there, and I'm going to see if I can unmute this. I'm not sure if I've got that capability. But if you've got a question, please type it in there in the chat box, and I'll answer your questions. No questions so far. Okay, great. If you have questions, please feel free to type those, send those to me in an email. It's jodyd@nextstarnetwork.com. I welcome any feedback you've got. I'd be very happy to address those and give you a call one-on-one. Thank you so much for joining me today.